Welcome to my Mac Live 2021. My title is Time Traveling with Sport Leadership. So through the years, I've looked up at many sport leaders and tried to learn and take something away from them and just apply it to my life. I'm just very fascinated about the ups and downs and all the different stories leaders have. Having been a captain of a rugby team at school myself, I always spent time looking into why sport leadership changes from one leader to the next. The style, the character, and ideology of leadership between captains over many years have all changed and are unique in their own ways. So having said that, I'm going to talk about 4 different stories from the late 90s to now in 3 different sports. Starting off with this guy, Michael Jordan, also known as the GOAT. Even though he's the GOAT, Michael Jordan's leadership is very controversial and questioned by many as to whether it should be encouraged for emerging athletes or not. But he's known as the GOAT because he's won the NBA 6 times with the Chicago Bulls dynasty, and he's also won the MVP award 5 times. He had an intense pace-setting leadership style, which was very harsh on his teammates. A pace-setting leadership style is all about setting very high standards, and everyone in the team has to meet those standards at all costs. However, there was a man called Sam Walker, who is the author of The Captain's Class. He has researched and studied the most crucial ingredient in a team that achieves and sustains historic greatness. And he's come to a conclusion that it's basically the character of the player who leads it. And he's regarded Jordan as an elite captain. However, when he first walked into the Chicago Bulls locker room, he noticed how Jordan led by needling and belittling his teammates who lived in constant fear of him. When he wasn't chuffed with the standard of performance that the junior players would come up with, he would go up to management and literally get them kicked off the field. His leadership and intense competitiveness was so hectic it also went off the field. He did some crazy things, like the one time he was playing golf with old Bill Clinton, and he put a bet up to $300,000 on a putt. I mean, we put a beer on a 4-foot putt and still miss. Now imagine 300 grand. It's a lot of beers. And the one time when he was waiting in the airport with his team, waiting for their luggage, he got about 9 players to all get on board with the bet that his luggage would come out of the carousel first. And to his whole, his luggage ended up coming out first. But it was later found out that he had got hold of one of the airport workers and bribed him to put his luggage out first. And then another story is with Scottie Pippen, his right-hand man. Pippen was a ladies' man. The ladies loved him. And he used to have a thing with Madonna. And Madonna used to come and pick him up in a limo every time they played in LA. And the one time when Madonna arrived in a limo, Jordan went up to her and told her to basically come to him, and it's an upgrade. My point to the story is how he took his level of competitiveness everywhere, and he thought that was his way of showing his leadership by being on top of everyone all the time. And then my next story is Camp Doldrum, which translated means Camp Barbed Wire. It was basically a military-style boot camp at a police camp in the South African bush. It was organized as a team-building experience by the head coach, Rudolf Stolry, and it was done in preparation for the 2003 Rugby World Cup. And obviously, being the Bok coach comes with a lot of responsibility and leadership. However, his leadership style was extremely bizarre. At this camp, he used military-style conformity to banish any sense of individuality, to basically bring the whole team together and unite them. He humiliated them. He ordered players to get naked into foxholes and sing the national anthem while ice-cold water was poured over them, and in the background, God Save the Queen and the haka was just blaring away. There were also guns on sites with soldiers, and these were fully grown men that had to report to these soldiers yes sir, no sir. They were also barely fed. They were hungry the whole time, and they got given live chickens and had to kill it and cook it and eat it themselves. The team actually ended up going on to do extremely badly at the World Cup, and that's when the whole leadership team took a change, and the coach stepped down and Jake White stepped in, and that's when they went on to go win the 2007 World Cup. But my point of this story is just the spectrum of leadership, the style of leadership. how it can vary so drastically. And then my next story is the Australian cricket cheating scandal. It was on March 24th, 2018. It was the third day of the South African Test here in South Africa. And during the lunch break, the senior players got together and brought a junior player over. And they told him to use some yellow sandpaper to scratch the ball. And then he put it back in his pants, which is quite ironic, the sandpaper. And they later got caught on the field on the big screen worldwide. And the whole team had to step down, face their consequences, as well as the coach. And after that, they brought this man in, Justin Langer. And he came in with one thing in mind, and that was to change and reform the Australian culture. He's an all-time great, part of the Australian Platinum 2000 team. And when he got called in as coach, he brought in some of his players that he played with. They were also part of the Platinum years, the likes of Adam Gilchrist, Ricky Ponting, Shane Warne, Brett Lee, Matthew Hayden from the Outback. But this type of leadership group took the team back to basic principles, which was honesty, responsibility, and respect, because the team needed it. They had lost their ways, and he was a harsh leader, but within reason, and the team needed it because the boys had lost their way. So he came in and cracked the whip, and they went on to go and win the Ashes a year later in England, which is arguably one of the biggest cricket tournaments in the world. And then lastly, this guy, he's a freak. He made his debut in 2001 and retired in 2015. His name's Richie McCaw. Personally, for me, he's the idealistic leader on and off the field. He's regarded as the greatest player to have ever lived. And trust me, that's quite hard to admit, being a proud Bok fan myself. But he's the second most capped player of all time with 148 caps. And he won 131 of them, setting a world record. Of the 148 he played, 110 of them he played as captain, which is a world record. And he had an 89% win record as captain, which is another world record. He also holds a record for the most World Player of the Year award, winning it 3 times, as well as being the highest scoring forward in New Zealand history. And New Zealand's win ratio is 20% higher when McCaw plays. And he's the only captain to have lifted the World Cup trophy twice. And he's the only captain to have captained a team to win the World Cup back-to-back in 2011 and 2015. And moving from the field to the books, his autobiography, The Open Side, is the best-selling autobiography in the rugby genre. When he was captain, the All Blacks were regarded as the most successful sporting team in sports history, with a winning percentage of 78% over a period of 112 years, topping the 1927 New York Yankees and the 98 Chicago Bulls with Jordan. So clearly McCaw did something correctly in his time. But when McCaw first started out, it wasn't all rainbows, silverware, and smooth sailing. He had major disappointments in the 03 and 07 World Cup. He said that was his biggest challenge in his career. But he said going through that early on in his career, it really did help and strengthen his mental strength. But Richie possessed a very democratic style of leadership, which means basically the leader consults and gets all the input based on everyone else's opinions, and then he has the final say. And in hindsight, I believe Michael Jordan and Richie McCaw were on par in terms of their greatness, obviously in their respective sports. But however, their leadership styles varied drastically. He realized that being the leader of a team, people are looking at you 24/7. They're looking to you as to see how things are done and what way the team goes. His thoughts on leadership was that he felt that he owed everyone a chance to feel they got a piece of it. He felt that he owed everyone a part of something bigger than themselves, which is probably why the All Blacks jersey is so well respected. When he was captain, he got his team to believe in leaving the jersey in a better place than it was before. Even though he had all these accolades, he still put the team's culture at the forefront and not himself. What he encouraged the most from his team was not to only do the right thing when everyone's looking, but to do the right thing when no one's looking. Basically, just not taking shortcuts. And his main element to effective leadership was walking the talk, basically. He said, if you're going to do the action spot on to inspire others around you, then a big part of getting the leadership side right is done. And speaking of inspiring actions, In 2007 World Cup, the All Blacks lost to France in the quarterfinals, and Richie McCaw's captaincy came under a lot of pressure and scrutiny. His team adopted a nickname as the Chokers. Anyway, fast forward 4 years now to the 2011 World Cup. Leading up to the final, All Blacks lost Dan Carter, Colin Slade, and Aaron Cruden, their top three fly-offs in New Zealand. And a fly-off is a very pivotal position in a rugby team. So that to ring up Stephen Donald, who was actually away on a fishing trip catching big trout. And he got called in as the reserve fly-off. So now the pressure's definitely on. But there was some uncommon knowledge, and that was that Richie had a stress fracture on his foot leading into the final. But anyway, he strapped it up, put down into his gumguard, and led his team onto the field for the final. And with about 20 minutes to go, the All Blacks were winning by 1 point. And he went into a collision and went down quite badly and didn't get back up. And the physio came running on and asked him, Richie, are you right? You come off, whatever. And Richie looked up to him as if he was mad. And he said, dude, myself and my team have spent the last 4 years preparing for the next 20 minutes. So he got up, embraced the pressure and only a little bit of pain. And his actions inspired his team to hang on and win the World Cup. As you can see in the last 10 minutes, everyone's story is very different. They have their own style of leadership. But I personally believe that there's no set of attributes or specific style which makes a great leader or captain of a sports team. Some are disciplinarians who are often very vocal and make their feelings very clear to their teammates. Others lead by example. But genuine attributes such as experience, decision-making, and the ability to motivate players around them whilst maintaining discipline, being under pressure, are considered the best qualities to make a great sports leader. Thank you.